So, here I am, and about to make a quick little video here about my day. Today is Sunday. I got some research done today. First, I had to make some move from one hotel to the other. It turns out that the place I was staying in, which I knew in advance didn't have room for me for 2 nights, so I had to move. And I was going to have to move back there, but fortunately the place I came to, they have an opening for the rest of the week, so I'm staying here. Anyway, I did get to Yad Vashem a little late today. Little glitches here and there, like getting on the wrong number 17 bus heading in the opposite direction of Yad Vashem. I had to take the number 17 bus facing the other direction, on the other side of the street. But, well, we made it. So, today I got into the archives and I took some time to examine one particular document that I started looking at. Was the dissertation that was done by somebody about women, the preservation of women's identity in the Lodz ghetto, and how some of their memoirs reflect their attempts at preserving their identity. And what this thesis looks at is 10 women in the Lodz ghetto, and I'm not done reading, most of it, about half of it yet, so I'll give more of it tomorrow. But each one writes a personal account of their experience. As the preservation of their identity is the theme. Let me give you a little background about the Lodz ghetto. There were 233,000 residents, of which 33.5% of Lodz were Jews. There were many textile factories. It was a sealed-off ghetto. It was almost impossible to get in or out of there. It was hermetically sealed. The wall was impervious, and so the ghetto lasted the longest because of its industrial importance. There was a lot of factories, textile factories, and so forth in there, and they were keeping the people productive. Chaim Rumkowski, who's a very controversial figure, felt if he gave the Germans what they wanted and kept everyone working in the ghetto, that they would not liquidate them. Of course, being hermetically sealed meant that they were very, very isolated from news about what was really happening in the rest of the world, about the final solution, and had no idea that the end for them would be the same as what was happening in other places, which was the liquidation and murder of everyone there. And so that's an issue that Rumkowski has to deal with when he's taking charge of the Lodz ghetto. There's a false belief, of course, because they're so isolated, that the Germans are very civilized people and they would never harm men, women, or children especially. Lodz was unique, as I said, because it was so sealed off and very industrial. And it lasted for 4 years. It was actually the longest lasting ghetto out of all of them. And the activities that were recorded about life in the ghetto were recorded in something called the Daily Chronicle of Lodz Ghetto. And I assume that was the newspaper that they had then. The Chronicle carefully documented very important events and kept records of what was happening and the quality of life of the inhabitants. And it complemented, the Chronicle was complemented with extensive diary and journal material to write this thesis. And the memoirs were studied for this dissertation and explored in a way in which women felt their relationships with their family, their community, and all of that factored into their survival. Recent research about women's experience in ghettos and camps shows the pressures and the degradations targeted at women were quite different than those that were targeted at men, of course. Simple acts of living, such as reproduction, caring for your children, acting as a mother or a sister or another woman to another woman, could be seen as a form of resistance and meet very bad circumstances with the Nazis. Aspects central to human nature, like childbirth, mothering, sisterhood, and also the importance of maintaining one's femininity and cleanliness in spite of the constant attempts to destroy these attributes, was another situation that took place. Women are often the target of genocides because of their ability to reproduce. Mothers with small children and pregnant women, of course, were sentenced. Going to a concentration camp, they were basically the first to die. It was a death sentence for them. And reproduction and childbirth in the ghetto were forms of resistance, of course, because it defied the Nazis' wishes. They were sexually vulnerable, though, and sexual assaults did take place, and that was a threat that men did not face, of course. Women attempted to preserve their femininity any way they could. In the barracks, in an example they gave in a work camp called Sarzysko Karmiana in Poland, they preserved the homey feminine appearance in their barracks by the way they kept their barracks. Women in the camps formed very close relationships with each other, more so than the men. They formed mutual aid societies or groups, sisterhoods of some kind, I guess you could call them. They were like family camps composed of 4 or 5 women who would share all their food, all their possessions, and protect one another as much as possible. And some of the female traits that we saw were their ability to cope with hunger and the women had a more sober view of reality than the men, and a willingness to establish relations with others in order to maintain their integrity and their identity. And some of the books call them camp sisters because they created these mutual assistance groups or societies, if you may. Ways to preserve feminine identity? Well, we see that there was an exploration of the changing roles in the family. Sisters, from sister to mother or from child to caregiver, gave women a will to live. They were constantly shifting in and out of roles because the men, in many cases, had already been deported. Women supported one another a lot more than the men did. They also struggled to preserve their identity through their community, becoming involved in the educational aspects of the ghetto, cultural life, the perpetuation of political organizations and ideology and religion. Women gained strength from the belief that their survival would allow them to make a difference in the world by exposing the effects of hatred and prejudice, a very idealistic outlook in that. Tomorrow I'll take a look, or later on I'll take a look at the history and context of the Lodz Ghetto.